This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy, we go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into something really fundamental, hunter-gatherer societies, specifically those still around today, and how their way of life kind of challenges a lot of our modern ideas. Yeah, our mission here is to unpack some fascinating details from the sources we've looked at. We want to explore how these communities live, their incredible adaptations, and the pretty profound lessons their social structures might offer about, well, human nature and culture. And there's some urgency here, too. Experts suggest that maybe by the end of this century, the last of these societies might disappear. That's an irreplaceable link to our past, potentially gone forever.
That's absolutely right. And it's crucial context, I think. Humans spent, vastly more time as hunter-gatherers than anything else. We think agriculture is ancient, but compared to hunting and gathering, it's relatively recent. And that shift to farming, well, it's what led to the decline of most hunter-gatherer groups. So this deep dive, it's a really rare chance to glimpse a way of life that shaped us for, millennia.
Okay, so with that huge historical perspective in mind, let's jump into some specifics. Let's look at some of these amazing groups that still exist, or did until very recently, and see how they embody this ancient lifestyle. You're going to see some incredible resilience. Let's start in Africa. The Kalahari Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert. They're famous for this ancient hunting method, persistence hunting. Now picture this. They chase an animal, like a kudu, an antelope, for maybe 2 to 5 hours. Over 25, even 35 kilometers. And this is in heat around 40 to 42 Celsius. That's what, 104, 107 Fahrenheit? It sounds almost superhuman.
It does, but there's some amazing biology behind it. See, humans are actually surprisingly efficient runners over long distances compared to many animals. We don't expend as much energy to increase speed, and crucially, we sweat all over. That cools us down incredibly effectively. The antelope, or whatever they're chasing, it overheats, it has to stop, find shade, find water. And that's the moment. The hunter who's kept cool can close in. It's thought this technique might go back maybe 2 million years.
2 million years. Wow. That really puts our own abilities, or lack thereof, into perspective, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's travel across the globe to the Spinifex people, the Pilanguru in Australia's Great Victoria Desert. Their name means home country in the flat between sandhills.
What's striking is how little was known about them really until maybe the 1910s, 1930s. Around the time missionaries started arriving.
Yeah, and their contact with the outside world took a really sharp, dangerous turn in 1952. The British started testing atomic bombs only about 300 kilometers away from their lands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A bushman named Walter McDougall was actually sent to try and warn them, find them, but it's a huge area. He couldn't reach everyone, so some were moved off to missions, places like Kundili and Warburton, but others, a determined group, they just stayed. They remained out there living their traditional life.
And that persistence, that dedication, it actually paid off in a really significant way.
It did.
In the year 2000, they became the second Aboriginal group in Australia to get native title rights over their land. We're talking 55,000 square kilometers. Huge area.
Yeah, a legal recognition of their connection, their ownership, a testament to their endurance, really.
Absolutely.
Okay, next stop, the Andaman Islands in the Bay of Bengal. This is where the Sentinelese live. They're kind of an enigma. Believed to be one of the last truly uncontacted Stone Age tribes, fiercely independent.
And that fierce independence is not an exaggeration. They've consistently resisted outside contact. There are documented incidents, like in 1974, a film crew tried to make contact, left some gifts, coconuts, a doll, a live pig. The Sentinelese responded by shooting arrows. The director actually got hit in the thigh. Then in 75, tourists were repelled. The message is pretty clear.
Yeah, very clear. And tragically reinforced in 2004, 2 fishermen, apparently drunk, drifted onto their island and were killed.
Mm-hmm.
When a Coast Guard helicopter went to try and retrieve the bodies, it was met with, quote, a shower of arrows and had to pull back. What little we know suggests they used javelins, a flat bow, and they seem to have different arrows for different things, fishing, hunting, and even an untipped one, apparently just for warning shots.
That's interesting. Shows intent.
Right. And amazingly, they survived the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami which devastated that region.
Incredible resilience. Demographically, it's hard to say. The 2001 Indian census recorded just 39 people, but estimates really vary, maybe 40, maybe up to 500, nobody knows for sure. And DNA analysis from a related tribe, the Jarawa, who actually did initiate contact back in 1997, suggests these groups migrated out of Africa maybe 60,000 years ago. Their story is it's a stark reminder of genuine cultural autonomy in our hyper-connected world.
Absolutely. Okay, one more example for now. Let's go to the Amazon, specifically Brazil's Macy River, home to the Pirahan people. And it's worth noting, Brazil's Amazon has more uncontacted tribes than anywhere else.
Right. And we know a fair bit about the Pirahan, thanks to an anthropological linguist, Daniel Everett. He lived with them for years. He describes them as just supremely resourceful, gifted in everything they need to survive there. They know all the important plants, where they are, what they do. They understand animal behavior, how to catch things, how to avoid things. Everett says they can literally walk into the jungle naked, no tools, nothing, and come back 3 days later with food baskets of fruit, nuts, maybe some small game they caught.
That's an incredible level of knowledge and self-reliance, just woven into their being. How is that knowledge even passed down without, schools or books?
Well, it's lived experience, observation, participation from childhood. It's embedded in their daily lives, their stories, their language.
Fascinating. And despite some minimal contact, like bartering occasionally with river traders, they've largely resisted outside ways, especially agriculture. They stick to hunting and gathering.
Exactly. No food storage. They eat what they find when they find it.
And get this, their sleep patterns. They don't really sleep through the night like we do. They take short naps, maybe 15 minutes, maybe up to 2 hours, all through the day and night, which apparently aligns more with how humans used to sleep before artificial light and rigid schedules.
Yeah, that segmented sleep. It speaks to a life lived more in tune with natural rhythms and immediate needs, rather than, the clock on the wall.
Okay, so we've looked at these specific, really fascinating communities, the Kalahari, the Spinefex, Sitanese, Pirahan, each unique. But maybe the biggest takeaway comes when we zoom out and look at what many hunter-gatherer societies shared, particularly this famous egalitarian nature they seem to have had. So what does this all mean for how we think about human society?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting, because anthropologists, they pretty much universally agree on this point. Wherever hunter-gatherers have been studied, Africa, Asia, South America, different environments, they consistently show these egalitarian, non-hierarchical structures. You see common traits: small bands, usually 20 to 50 people, nomadic or semi-nomadic life, generally peaceful relations with neighbors, and a whole cultural ethos built around things like individual autonomy, non-directive child rearing, we'll get into that, non-violence, sharing, cooperation, and making decisions by consensus. The absolute core value underpinning everything else was the equality of individuals.
Right. And when we say equality here, it's crucial to understand it's not like our modern democratic ideal of, say, equal opportunity. It was much more fundamental. It meant everyone was entitled to food. If you were part of the band, you got fed. Period. Food was shared. It meant no one piled up personal wealth. Material goods were shared too. It meant nobody had the right to boss anyone else around. Individuals made their own choices. Even parents didn't really order kids about in the way we might think. And crucially, group decisions. Made by everyone agreeing. Consensus. There was no chief, no boss, no big man calling the shots.
Exactly. And this is where we need to be careful not to mix things up. Sometimes people point to groups like the Yanomami in the Amazon, sometimes called the fierce people, as evidence that primitive life was inherently violent.
Right, I've heard that.
But see, the Yanomami weren't primarily hunter-gatherers. They practiced agriculture, mainly growing bananas and plantains. And crucially, their fierceness often came after contact, after experiencing things like slave raids and genocidal attacks from outsiders.
Ah, okay. So it was a response, not an inherent trait of their original culture.
Largely, yes. True hunter-gatherer societies, their whole system depended on intense cooperation and sharing. Violence and hierarchy would actually undermine the way they needed to live. Their egalitarian ethos wasn't just a nice idea, it was practical. It worked.
Okay, that makes sense. Which leads us to the really big question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If this equality was so central and apparently so successful for so long, how did they maintain it? How did they stop hierarchies from forming? Our sources point to basically 3 interconnected cultural strategies, like a toolkit they used.
Right. The first one is a concept from Christopher Boehm called reverse dominance. The idea is that hunter-gatherers weren't just passively equal, they were, as Boehm put it, fiercely egalitarian. They actively worked to prevent anyone from getting too big for their britches, so to speak.
Fiercely egalitarian. I like that. And how did they do that? What was the first tool in the kit?
Ridicule, teasing, public humor.
Seriously. Like making fun of people.
Exactly. There's a classic example from the Juhuansi, again in the Kalahari, called insulting the meat.
Insulting the meat. What's that?
Okay, so if a hunter makes a really great kill, brings back a big fat antelope, something everyone wants, he's expected to be humble about it. He should say something like, it's just a skinny, worthless thing.
He has to downplay his success.
Yes. And if he doesn't, if he boasts or acts proud, the others will do it for him. They'll tease him, make fun of the kill, say it's barely worth eating.
Wow. Why? What's the point of that?
An elder explained it beautifully to the anthropologist Richard Lee. He said, basically, when a young man kills much meat, he comes to think of himself as a chief or a big man, and he thinks the rest of us are his servants or inferiors. We can't accept this, so we always speak of his meat as worthless. This way, we cool his heart and make him gentle.
Cooling his heart. That's powerful. It's a direct social mechanism to keep ego in check.
Precisely. It's leveling, and it usually worked. But if ridicule wasn't enough, if someone persistently tried to dominate or boss others around,
But then,
shunning, the group would simply ignore the person, act as if they didn't exist.
ouch. That sounds brutal in a small, tight-knit group.
It's incredibly powerful. Imagine being completely cut off socially by the very people you depend on for survival, for company, for everything. It almost always brought the person back into line, or they'd choose to leave the band, because that isolation is just unbearable for humans.
Okay, so reverse dominance through ridicule and shunning.
Yeah.
That's tool number one. What's the second theory?
This one comes from Peter Gray, and it focuses on play. Gray argues that hunter-gatherers maintained equality by deliberately cultivating the playful side of our human nature.
Play. How does play promote equality?
Think about social play. True play, not hyper-competitive sports maybe, but spontaneous play. To play well with others, you have to suspend aggression and dominance. You have to be sensitive to the other person's state, their needs. Gray uses the example of monkeys playing. The stronger monkey will often self-handicap, hold back its strength so it doesn't actually hurt or scare the weaker playmate. If it didn't, the play would stop. So the drive to play actually requires suppressing the drive to dominate.
That makes sense. So you're saying hunter-gatherers applied this principle more broadly.
Exactly. Play wasn't just for kids. It permeated their lives. Hunting could be playful. Gathering could be playful. Even their religious ceremonies often had playful elements. Sharing was done willingly, playfully. And as we saw, even punishment often involved humor and ridicule, which has a playful edge.
So by keeping things playful, they stayed in a mental state that naturally counters dominance and hierarchy. Is that the idea?
That's the core of Gray's argument, yes. It kept cooperation high and competition for status low.
Fascinating. Okay, what's the third piece of this puzzle?
This theory focuses on child rearing practices. Researchers like Elizabeth Marshall Thomas, who we mentioned, and Darcia Narvaez emphasize this. They describe hunter-gatherer parenting as fundamentally trusting.
Trusting. What does that mean in practice? Some might call it permissive today, right?
Well, yes, words like permissive or indulgent get used, but the core was trust. Trusting the infant's instincts, like knowing when it needs to nurse. Trusting children to learn and explore on their own through self-directed play. There was very little direction, very little correction, almost no punishment, certainly not physical punishment. Children were held, kept close, their needs met promptly, but they weren't constantly being told what to do or not do.
And Elizabeth Marshall Thomas's observations of the Yuhuansi kids, they sound almost too good to be true. She said they rarely cried, were never yelled at, never hit, seldom even scolded. She described them as free from frustration or anxiety, sunny and cooperative, every parent's dream, and concluded no culture can ever have raised better, more intelligent, more likable, more confident children. That's quite a statement.
It really is, and the implication is profound. If children are treated with trust and respect from day one, if their autonomy is honored, they grow up trusting others, treating others well. They feel less need to prove themselves, less need to dominate. And you can see how this connects directly back to the play theory, too.
Ah, because these kids were basically playing all day long, right?
Exactly. Play was their education, their way of being, so they grew up seeing life itself as, in many ways, playful. And they carried that playful, cooperative, non-dominant attitude into adulthood. It becomes a self-reinforcing cultural pattern.
So, reverse dominance, play, and trusting child-rearing. 3 cultural pillars supporting this incredibly long-lasting egalitarian way of life. As we wrap up this deep dive, I feel like we've unearthed some really powerful ideas. The big takeaway for me is that these lessons are cultural. They're not hardwired genetically. Our species, Homo sapiens, clearly has the capacity for both incredible peace and cooperation, and also for conflict and hierarchy. It's about the cultural conditions we create.
That's absolutely right. It's about the choices societies make, the values they emphasize, the practices they cultivate. And if these theories hold water about reverse dominance, play, and trusting children, and if we today genuinely aspire to more equality and peace, well, it gives us something to think about, doesn't it? Maybe we need to find more effective, maybe even playful ways to cool the hearts of those who try to dominate. Maybe we need to consciously bring more genuine, non-competitive play back into all aspects of our lives, not just childhood. And maybe, just maybe, we need to consider raising our own children with more trust, more kindness, more respect for their autonomy.
Those are some challenging but ultimately hopeful thoughts to end on. It leaves us, and you, with a question to ponder. What stands out to you from this deep dive into the lives and cultures of hunter-gatherers? Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other podcasts, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.